Easily the highlight of David Tennant's era, this two-parter from 2007, Human Nature and the Family of Blood, is an emotionally complex piece of sci-fi drama, exploring and addressing subjects and themes like the terrors of war, racism, and what it truly means to be human. Add in the fantastic concept of the Doctor becoming human and forgetting about his life as a time traveller, and you have the recipe for a dark and powerful story. It's a story that really puts Martha through the ringer. Freema Agyeman finally comes into her own here. Here she is forced to watch the man she loves forget her and fall in the arms of another woman. It's heartbreaking stuff. More heartbreaking, though, is watching the blossoming relationship between John Smith and poor Joan Redfern, played by the ever excellent Jessica Hines, and knowing that it's doomed from the beginning. Adding some truly creepy villains in the form of the family, particular praise should go to Harry Lloyd as Son of Mine, who continues his simply stellar performance from the previous episode, but more on that later. And a perfect Who adventure is born. The Family of Blood serves as an extremely satisfying conclusion to the story begun in Human Nature, and proves to be one of the more moving, inventive, and often even lyrical episodes of the series as demonstrated thus far in the new series. It's full of great ideas, terrific dialogue, and wonderful performances from all involved. The episode is another great moment in the history of the Doctor's character, and more material for David Tennant to attack with such ferocity that continues his march towards claiming the top spot in the pantheon of actors to portray the iconic Time Lord. There's a moment when everything becomes clear, however, in this episode, when Baines provides the narration over the montage of what really happens to the family in the end. He realises, he says, that the reason the Doctor was running was not out of fear, but that he was being kind. Then he explains what happens to each of them as they face the fury of the Time Lord. It's an eerie moment, a window into the part of the Doctor that's easy to forget when Tennant is rambling on in his eccentric and jovial style. We forget that he said things such as, "I used to have so much mercy." This also recalls what Donna Noble said to him in The Runaway Bride at the Doctor, "Sometimes I think someone needs to stop you." More
He never raised his voice. That was the worst thing. The fury of the Time Lord. And then we discovered why. Why this Doctor, who had fought with gods and demons, why he'd run away from us and hidden. He was being kind. He wrapped my father in unbreakable chains, forged in the heart of a dwarf star. He tricked my mother into the event horizon of a collapsing galaxy, to be imprisoned there forever. He still visits my sister, once a year, every year. I wonder if one day he might forgive her, but there she is, can you see? He trapped her inside a mirror. Every mirror. If ever you look at your reflection and see something move behind you just for a second, that's her. That's always her. As for me, I was suspended in time, and the Doctor put me to work standing over the fields of England as their protector. We wanted to live forever, so the Doctor made sure that we did.
Moreover, Harry Lloyd, as Baines, deserves a special mention as one of the better villains the series has ever seen. He's wonderfully manic and oozes danger in the elastic features that are distorted in a kind of permanent rage. The off-kilter cadence of his speech is haunting and unsettling right up until the end. And while at first the Scarecrow army seemed a bit goofy, the final touch of imprisoning Baines in time as a Scarecrow was a nice touch that should keep the kids up at night, and is very fitting. Jessica Hines is also terrific as Joan Redfern, the woman who falls in love with John Smith. A terrific comic actress in Spaced, Hines proves more capable of the serious drama, and finds herself perfectly able to ground the more fantastic elements of Doctor Who in a completely honest and credible performance. There's another beautiful moment when we see the Doctor, now a Time Lord again, come back to see Joan near the end of the episode. She asks if he can change back to John Smith, and the Doctor simply says that he could. She asks if he will, the Doctor simply replies, no. However, it's the line that follows that seems to shake the Doctor and is of particular note here. Joan asks, if you hadn't have come to this place on a whim, would anyone have died? To which the Doctor cannot reply. Furthermore, the two-parter takes a really minor but significant approach in the handling of race. After largely sidestepping the issue in the Shakespeare Code and Daleks in Manhattan Evolution of the Daleks, Doctor Who finds a deft way to deal with the prejudice of the era without letting them overwhelm the story. Paul Cornell says all he needs to say with crucial scenes. Hutchinson's unprovoked cruelty, John Smith's dismissal of Martha concerns as a cultural inability to tell fiction from reality, and Joan Redfern's refusal to believe that Martha could ever be a doctor. The story is mindful of its younger audience and how it depicts such racism. The awfulness of each instance is conveyed without the use of slurs or statements that would easily be repeatable as schoolyard taunts. More importantly, however, we see a range of characters engage in such behaviour, emphatically proving that the bigotry is in the exclusive province of bad people. Perhaps mindful of not having the Doctor say anything too racist, even if he isn't in possession of his body at the time. The show gives John Smith the least offensive statement, but Joan's harsh words represent a truly uncomfortable moment, given how much warmth Jessica Hynes brings to the role. Again, the key here is that Cornell's script doesn't let us fall back on easy distinctions. Outside of Tim Latimer, Nurse Redfern is easily the most ambiguously good-hearted character we meet in 1913, yet even she cannot magically rise above the prejudices that define her era. Indeed, that last point leads me on to the other reason that this story manages a worthwhile discussion of race. None of it really has anything to do with Martha. Human Nature in the Family of Blood is about the failings of Joan Redfern, of Hutchinson, of John Smith, of the headmaster, of an entire damned civilization. But it's never Martha's job to point out the errors of their ways. Her primary function is one of exasperation with, appropriately enough, the backward primitives that surround her. Hutchinson deserves a bucket on his head for his wise crack, and Martha likely puts an extra oomph into her memory-restoring slap after John Smith's condensation, but in neither instance can she really be bothered to engage with their bullshit. Her demonstration of medical knowledge to Joan isn't about proving her worthiness to the prejudiced nurse, at least not primarily, but rather about reassessing her own sense of self after weeks of patronising dismissals. On this occasion, Doctor Who really does get it right. Martha's presence allows the show to hold up a mirror to the bigotries of 1913, but the show doesn't then waste her time by making those issues define her part in the story. Admittedly, I'm not entirely convinced by Martha's story, but at least its weaknesses are purely on a character level. After all, both Cornell's script and Freema Gaiman's performance do an exemplary job in showing strength in response to the era's attitudes, but neither is able to find similar success with the story of Martha's ongoing infatuation with the Doctor. Infatuation is the right word, at least a fair word choice when speaking to John Smith is anything to judge by. "I love him to bits" is a statement of someone who knows she is dealing with a hopelessness crush, not a love for the ages. That said, both the phrasing and the delivery of the line in Human Nature about how the Doctor had to go and fall in love with a human, and it wasn't me, is rather too on the nose. That's a big clear statement for Martha to make, and the story wimps out in dealing with its implications. Now, Martha's romantic feelings just work on a narrative level, as they help further the contrast between the Doctor and John Smith. Martha can only engage in a pale simulation of romance with the Doctor. Hell, that was arguably true of Rose as well, even if the Doctor reciprocated her feelings. Whereas John Smith is fully capable of love with Joan, even imagining a bond that lasts for decades. It's just a shame that Doctor Who then undoes this development once the Doctor is restored, but then, how else were they going to get over it? Still, this is ultimately a minor criticism in what is otherwise a basically perfect story, especially as the sidestepping of the Doctor and Martha's non-relationship issues allows the Family of Blood to end by telling the rest of Tim Latimer's story. In the time between the terrible day in France and that Remembrance Day ceremony, Tim lives an entire life, and we can only speculate on its contents. We know at least that it was a human life, and he did some good in the time allotted to him. We know that he never forgot about the Doctor and Martha, nor that they ever forgot him. That final scene may well be my favourite ending in all of 50 years of Doctor Who. As the aged Tim Latimer, Hugh Reese doesn't have any lines. Hell, his name doesn't even appear in the credits. But the look on his face when he sees the Doctor and Martha after all that time tells you everything you need to know about this story. I'm tearing up again just thinking about it.
In June 1914, an Archduke of Austria was shot by a Serbian. And this then led through nations having treaties with nations, like a line of dominoes falling, to some boys from England walking together in France on a terrible day.
1 minute past the hour. It's now. Hutchinson, this is the time. It's now. To the right! To the right!
You made it. Thank you, Doctor. Leave me. I'm not gonna make it.
Oh, yes, you are. Didn't I promise you all those years ago? Now, come on, and that's an order.
They sleep beyond England's foe. They went with songs to the battle. They were young, straight of limb, true of eye, steady and aglow. They were staunch to the end against odds uncounted. They fell with their faces to the foe. They shall not grow old, as we that are left grow old. Age shall not weary them, nor the years condemn. At the going down of the sun, and in the morning, we will remember them.
I do mention him fairly often, but the score for Human Nature, The Family of Blood is so good that it deserves a special credit for the man. Murray Gold's music for Doctor Who has been an absolute triumph since the series returned, and some of his musical cues, Rose, Donna and Martha's themes come to mind, will be long remembered. On the Series 3 soundtrack there's a version of the piece where Martha heads to the TARDIS on her bicycle, which is whistled in its entirety, but it would appear that the producers vetoed this version in favour of what was broadcast. Both versions are uplifting and gorgeous, but I think I prefer the whistling because it's so unusual. The way this piece becomes darker and more menacing is sublime. Great heartwarming music for the waltz. This is the first instance of a genuinely beautiful violin score when two characters kiss. Usually it is mushy as hell, but this is wonderfully understated. Sharp violin stings at the cliffhanger mark it as a special moment. The Scarecrows marching to war is accompanied by a cross between a military march tune and a nursery rhyme, and it makes their approach all the more exciting, and is a brilliant track. But I can't go one more sentence without mentioning the absolutely amazing David Tennant here. It's here that Tennant truly shines, both as the innocent Smith and as a heroic but arrogant Doctor, here completely unaware of the pain and misery he's brought upon the people Smith knew and cared for. It takes a great actor to convince us he's playing two different characters at once. It takes David Tennant to play two characters and make us really care for both, even when one is clearly doomed to die. Boasting a fantastic script from Paul Cornell and fine direction on the part of Charles Palmer, Human Nature and The Family of Blood form one of the finest Doctor Who stories ever made, both visually and emotionally. The performances are perfect, bar one or two. The idea is even more so. It's the type of story only Doctor Who can pull off, and it does so beautifully and in a very stylish manner. Overall, Human Nature and The Family of Blood doesn't just have a unique concept, but the delivery to outdo the idea, not to mention paving the way for the rest of the series. I cannot praise this story enough, and is why I give Human Nature a 9.5 out of 10, and The Family of Blood a 10 out of 10.